A small problem is never truly small if left unattended. In the beginning, it may appear harmless, almost invisible to others, even insignificant to ourselves. But what begins as a gentle discomfort, a quiet voice in the background, can slowly evolve into something that occupies our entire mind, our entire space, in our entire life. Much like the story of the small dragon, which grew each time it was ignored, our internal and external issues thrive on neglect. They grow silently in the corners of our awareness, waiting for us to either face them or allow them to consume everything we have built. In our modern lives, we are constantly encouraged to push forward, to ignore pain, to suppress emotion, to label fear and doubt as weakness. But just because something is small or inconvenient does not mean it lacks power. The power lies in its persistence. A dripping tap may not flood your home today, but give it time, days, weeks, months, and it will rot the wood, stain the walls, and weaken the foundation. In the same way, a misunderstanding in a relationship, a missed boundary, an unspoken truth, if left unchecked, grows in silence. We often think that by refusing to acknowledge a problem, we can somehow make it disappear. But silence is not resolution, avoidance is not mastery, it is delay, and delay feeds the dragon. The mind has an interesting way of dealing with what it doesn't want to confront. It builds walls, it makes excuses, it distracts, it tells stories to convince us that everything is fine. But deep inside, we know something is off. The discomfort lingers, the anxiety grows, the frustration builds. And suddenly, we find ourselves reacting to life with more anger, more confusion, more weariness, without fully understanding why. This is the dragon growing in size. This is the result of a small matter being left unresolved. This is the price we pay for not listening to ourselves in the beginning. It is not weakness to acknowledge something early. In fact, it is wisdom. Strength is not always about charging forward or being unaffected. Sometimes it's about the courage to pause, to observe what is truly happening inside, and to say, "There is something here that needs my attention." Perhaps it is a small resentment, a feeling of being unheard, a promise we made to ourselves that we did not keep. These may seem trivial, but when stacked over time, they weigh heavily. They create tension in our relationships, hesitation in our progress, and disconnection from our inner peace. In our pursuit of growth, we often think only big problems deserve our focus. But the truth is, the big problems were once small. The avalanche began with a single shift in snow. The forest fire began with a spark. The broken bond began with a single word left unsaid. Every major crisis we face, internally or externally, usually has a beginning we chose to ignore. We walk past the signs because they seem harmless. We silence the intuition that something isn't right because it's inconvenient to act. We smile and say it's nothing, when deep down we know it is something. There is a saying, the wound that is ignored becomes infected. That infection spreads not only to our own well-being, but to those around us. We carry our unspoken emotions into conversations. We wear our unresolved fears as armor, and eventually people begin reacting not to who we are, but to what we have become defensive, closed, distant. All because of something we chose not to face when it was small. This is not to blame ourselves, but to realize our responsibility. If we can catch the dragon while it is still small, we do not have to live in fear of its full size. In martial arts, one is taught to control the opponent by controlling the moment. Timing is everything. A small shift, a subtle block, an early step. These determine the outcome. In the same way, life offers us many small moments to act wisely, to intervene with kindness, to correct course, to speak up, to let go. But these moments only help if we are present enough to notice them, and presence comes from awareness. If we live on autopilot, we miss the dragon. By the time we see it, it is already too large, too powerful, too entrenched in our lives. But if we live with awareness, we notice the shift, we feel the tension rise, we observe the change in our mood. And instead of pretending it isn't there, we ask, why? What is happening in me? What needs to be acknowledged, accepted, and resolved? This inner dialogue is the sword that keeps the dragon small. This attention is the medicine. Because the moment we look directly at the problem, it loses its power to grow. What is observed begins to dissolve, what is named can be understood, and what is understood can be changed. It takes humility to accept that even a small issue deserves our care. It takes discipline to resist the urge to bury it under distractions, and it takes compassion to see that healing is not about avoiding pain, but about walking through it consciously. When we teach children to ignore their feelings, to dismiss what they sense, we are teaching them to feed the dragon. When we tell ourselves, it's not that bad, while feeling the weight in our chest, we are doing the same. The problem isn't the dragon, the problem is that we pretended it didn't exist. True mastery in life does not come from controlling the world outside. It comes from recognizing what stirs within, and choosing to meet it early with presence and care. That is how we prevent the small from becoming monstrous. That is how we keep the house from being moved. That is how we stay grounded, clear, and whole. Because in the end, everything that grows in darkness has one vulnerability, the light of our attention. The dragon is only as dangerous as our denial allows it to be, and the sooner we see it, the sooner we are free. Peace is often misunderstood. People think peace means smiling all the time, saying everything is fine, or pretending nothing ever bothers us. But that is not peace, that is performance, and when we perform peace, when we wear it like a mask, what we're really doing is denying the truth of our inner experience. We are telling ourselves and others that everything is okay, while inside something is breaking. Something is screaming, something is unsettled. This is not peace, it is denial, and denial, no matter how pretty it looks on the outside, is the seed of inner chaos. When we deny our feelings, we do not erase them. When we push down sadness, it doesn't disappear. When we ignore anger, it doesn't dissolve. When we tell ourselves we're not afraid, but deep down we are trembling, the fear doesn't vanish, it hides. It stores itself in our body, in our nervous system, in our habits, in our reactions. It waits, and when we least expect it, it emerges, not as a gentle whisper, but as rage, as confusion, as anxiety that we don't understand. We think we've moved on, we think we've healed, but really we've only buried the truth beneath layers of denial, and what is buried alive doesn't die, it multiplies. Denial is seductive because it feels like control. It feels like strength. When we say, I'm fine, when we force ourselves to smile, when we suppress our discomfort, we feel like we're in charge of our emotions. But what we're really doing is closing the door on our own wisdom. Emotions are not enemies, they are messengers. They arise to show us something, to guide us, to warn us, to protect us. And when we deny them, we deny the intelligence of our own inner system. We start to disconnect from ourselves. We stop trusting what we feel, and when that happens, we lose the most important relationship we have, the one with our own being. Imagine a house with a leaking pipe. Instead of fixing it, the owner paints over the stains. It looks clean for a while. Guests come and compliment the house, but beneath the paint, the leak continues, the water spreads, the foundation weakens, and one day the damage is too great to hide. The same happens in us. We patch over our pain, we decorate the surface, we show the world our best self, while inside we are breaking, and the longer we deny the leak, the worse the damage becomes. True peace comes not from avoiding the truth, but from being in right relationship with it. It means facing what hurts. It means allowing space for discomfort. It means being honest with ourselves even when that honesty is painful. There is deep power in saying, I am not okay right now, but I am here with myself. That kind of self-presence, that kind of inner loyalty, is what builds real peace. Because when we can sit with our truth, we no longer have to run from it. When we can feel our pain without judging it, we free ourselves from the need to pretend. In every spiritual path, there is a moment when silence becomes louder than words, when stillness reveals more than movement, and in that silence, what arises is not always beautiful. Sometimes it's grief. Sometimes it's regret. Sometimes it's the parts of us we've tried to hide for years. But if we stay present, if we allow what comes to come, we begin to see that these hidden parts were never the enemy. They were wounded, not wicked. They were ignored, not evil. They were waiting, not attacking. And as we embrace them, the chaos inside us begins to soften. We live in a world that praises productivity and punishes vulnerability. We are told to be strong, to keep going, to get over it. But what if strength is not pushing through? What if strength is pausing? What if strength is sitting down and saying, something inside me needs attention? That shift from denial to attention is where chaos turns into clarity. The storm begins to settle not because we silenced it, but because we finally listened. We listened to our fear, our anger, our exhaustion. And in doing so, we stopped fighting ourselves. There is a discipline in honesty. It is not easy to admit when we are hurting. It is not comfortable to feel grief fully, to let sadness rise, to allow anger to move through us without shame. But that discomfort is a doorway. Every feeling fully felt brings us closer to peace, not surface peace, not pretend peace, but deep, anchored peace, the kind of peace that cannot be shaken by external noise. The kind that grows roots in truth, not illusion. Think of a garden overrun with weeds. If we simply trim the tops, it looks neat, but the roots remain. In time, the weeds return. Only when we dig out the roots do we create lasting change. Denial is like trimming the weeds. It gives temporary relief, but the roots of the issue remain. To pull them out, we must go deeper. We must get our hands dirty. We must be willing to face the soil of our inner world. It is hard work, but it is holy work, and the garden that grows from this effort is one of real beauty, real peace. There is no need to be ashamed of what we feel. There is no weakness in having emotions. There is no failure in being human. The only mistake is pretending to be above it, pretending to be untouched. That pretense disconnects us not only from ourselves, but from others, because when we deny our pain, we also deny the pain of others. We become unable to empathize, to connect, to support. But when we allow our own truth, we become softer, we become more real, and in that realness, relationships heal, families heal, communities heal. We often ask how to find peace. The answer is not out there. It is within, not in avoidance but in awareness, not in suppression but in surrender, not in denying the dragon, but in recognizing that it is a part of us, a part that longs to be seen, understood, and integrated. And when we do that, the dragon no longer grows, it no longer controls, it becomes a guide, not a threat, a symbol of what once was chaos, now transformed by our attention. So when something feels wrong, do not say, "There's no such thing as a dragon." Instead, say, "Let me see what is here." That small act of acknowledgement can change the course of everything. It can prevent the dragon from taking over the house. It can restore harmony. It can lead us back to ourselves, and in that space, where nothing is denied and everything is embraced, we find the peace we were always looking for. Pretending is one of the most exhausting things a human being can do. It requires constant effort to maintain an image that doesn't reflect reality. When we go through life pretending that we are unaffected, unbothered, or unshaken, we are not being strong. We are simply delaying an inevitable confrontation with the truth. So many people live their lives beneath masks, smiling when they want to cry, laughing when their hearts feel heavy, nodding in agreement when deep down they want to say no. But no matter how perfect the performance, the soul always knows what is real. It always keeps score, and at some point the tension between who we pretend to be and who we really are becomes too great to bear. The process of awakening, of healing, of reclaiming ourselves begins the moment we stop pretending. It begins when we are willing to be honest, brutally, tenderly, courageously honest, with what we truly feel, not what we think we should feel, not what others expect us to feel, but what actually lives within us. That first moment of real honesty is like taking off heavy armor. The relief is instant. The weight that we have carried for years suddenly becomes visible, and we realize how much energy we've been wasting just trying to appear okay. Pretending may win us approval. It may protect us from uncomfortable conversations. It may help us avoid judgment, but it also separates us from our own life, because we are not living truthfully. We are not present in our experience. We are playing a role, and every time we do that, we give a piece of our power away. We silence the parts of ourselves that want to speak. We dismiss the emotions that are trying to guide us. We abandon our own inner world just to maintain a picture that looks good on the outside. There is a quiet violence in pretending, not violence toward others, but violence toward ourselves. We silence the voice that says, "I'm tired." We ignore the whisper that says something's not right. We shut down the part of us that longs to rest, to speak out, to be seen. And the longer we pretend, the more disconnected we become. We start to forget what joy feels like. We lose our sense of authenticity. Life becomes a series of performances, and then we wonder why we feel numb, why we feel hollow, why we can't sleep at night or feel calm during the day. It's not that something is broken. It's that something is being hidden, and what is hidden always finds a way to speak. Stopping the performance is not weakness. It is not giving up. It is the beginning of liberation. It is standing in front of the mirror and saying, "This is where I really am. This is how I truly feel." That kind of honesty requires bravery. It is not always comfortable. It may disappoint others. It may disrupt the image they have of us. But we were not born to live as someone else's idea. We were born to live as ourselves, fully, freely, honestly, and if that honesty shakes a few things, then so be it. What crumbles under the weight of truth was never solid to begin with. When we stop pretending, we start healing, because healing can only happen where there is truth. If we lie to ourselves, we can't access what actually needs attention. If we pretend we are fine, we will never go deep enough to uncover what needs to be mended. The human heart is incredibly resilient, but it needs honesty to recover. It needs light to grow, and that light only comes when we open the doors and let the truth breathe. There is no shame in feeling lost, no failure in feeling broken, no weakness in needing help. These are all human experiences. Everyone has their dragons. Everyone has their battles. The only difference is whether we face them or pretend they don't exist. The story of "there's no such thing as a dragon" is not about fantasy. It's about awareness. The dragon only grew because it was ignored. The moment it was acknowledged, it stopped growing. In the same way, the moment we stop denying our reality, the healing begins. The chaos stops escalating, the pain finds expression, and expression becomes the pathway to peace. In every human life, there comes a time when pretending becomes more painful than honesty. We reach a threshold. We realize that continuing to wear the mask is no longer worth the cost, and in that moment we are faced with a choice: return to the performance or begin again in truth. Choosing truth doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It doesn't mean people will understand. It doesn't mean we will have all the answers, but it does mean we are finally aligned with our own soul. It means we are walking in the same direction as our inner compass. And that alignment is what gives life meaning. We live in a culture that rewards performance. People are praised for being strong, for holding it all together, for not complaining. But true strength is not in the silence, it's in the honesty. True power is not in appearing perfect, it's in embracing imperfection without shame. When we show up in our raw, real form, we give others permission to do the same. Our honesty becomes an invitation, a mirror, a reminder that they, too, don't have to pretend. Life becomes lighter when we stop pretending. Relationships become deeper. Decisions become clearer, purpose becomes easier to follow, because we are no longer filtering everything through the question, "What will people think?" Instead, we are asking, what is true for me right now? And that shift changes everything. It moves us from performance to presence, from illusion to integrity, from confusion to clarity. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more real people. People who are willing to say, "This is me," unfiltered. People who are willing to sit with discomfort, to be seen in their process, to honor their own evolution, no matter how messy it looks. The beauty of stopping the performance is that it frees up energy. Energy that was once spent on hiding can now be spent on healing. Energy that was used to control appearances can now be used to build something real. Let us not waste our lives acting like everything is fine. Let us not feed the dragon of denial any longer. Let us look at our truth, no matter how small, no matter how quiet, no matter how inconvenient. And let us say, "I see you, I hear you, I will no longer pretend you are not there." That is the beginning of true awareness. That is the foundation of real peace. That is the only way forward. Healing is not something that arrives by accident. It does not fall from the sky, nor does it appear suddenly without invitation. It begins the moment we decide to stop running, the moment we choose to pause and turn around to face what we have been trying so hard to avoid. That turning, that courageous act of acknowledgement, is the true beginning of change. When we acknowledge what is real, whether it's pain, regret, fear, or confusion, we are no longer at war with ourselves. We are no longer fighting against our own truth. That simple act of seeing what is, without judgment or denial, opens the door to healing in a way nothing else can. Many people think healing is about fixing something broken. But healing is not about becoming perfect or eliminating all flaws. It is about integration, about seeing what we have rejected or hidden and choosing to hold it close instead of pushing it away. When we are wounded, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, our instinct is often to numb, to distract, to minimize. We tell ourselves that if we ignore the pain long enough, it will disappear. But pain that is ignored does not leave, it lingers. It waits patiently for the moment we are quiet enough, still enough, honest enough to feel it again. And in that moment of feeling, we are given a choice: continue to suppress or begin to heal. Acknowledgement is not weakness. It is wisdom. To say, "Yes, this hurt me," or "Yes, I am struggling," or "Yes, I need time," is not a declaration of defeat. It is a sign of deep inner awareness, because the truth is, we cannot heal what we do not admit. We cannot address what we refuse to see. What remains in the shadows grows in power, but what is brought into the light begins to lose its grip. It softens, it reveals its true nature, and often, what we feared most was never as frightening as we imagined. The dragon, once looked at closely, is not as terrifying as the illusion we had created in our mind. The greatest shift happens not when someone else validates our pain, but when we finally validate it ourselves. When we stop seeking external permission to feel what we feel, when we recognize that our inner experience is real, worthy, and meaningful, that recognition creates space, space for breath, space for release, space for self-compassion, and within that space something begins to shift. The tension loosens, the tears come, the weight starts to lift, and though it may not happen all at once, something deep inside starts to settle. Healing is rarely loud. It doesn't always look like dramatic transformation. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes it looks like choosing to rest instead of push. Sometimes it sounds like saying no to something we always said yes to before. Sometimes it feels like forgiving ourselves for not being where we thought we should be. These small moments of acknowledgement build up over time. They create a new internal reality, one that is based on presence, not pressure, one that honors truth over performance. There is profound power in naming what we feel, not to label ourselves, but to become intimate with our experience. To say, "I feel grief," is not to become grief. It is to recognize its presence and meet it with tenderness. Emotions want movement. They want recognition, and once they are named, they begin to move. The energy trapped in our system starts to flow. This is not magic. It is the natural intelligence of the human heart. It knows how to heal when we stop interrupting the process with denial, shame, and judgment. Often, we fear that if we admit our pain, we will be overwhelmed by it, that we will fall apart and never come back together. But the truth is, we only fall apart when we keep holding everything inside. The breaking happens because we waited too long to open the door. But when we practice consistent, gentle acknowledgement, we don't break, we release. Piece by piece, breath by breath, healing becomes a rhythm, not a rescue, a process, not a performance. To heal is to remember that we are not our pain, we are the one witnessing it, we are the awareness behind it. And that awareness is vast. It can hold sorrow and joy, it can hold doubt and faith, it can hold grief and hope. When we identify only with the wound, we feel small, helpless, defeated. But when we remember the part of us that can see the wound clearly, that can meet it with care, we find strength we didn't know we had. That is the strength of presence, the strength of stillness, the strength of simply being with what is real. There is no perfect timeline for healing. It does not follow a schedule or obey the rules of logic. It moves according to the laws of the heart, and the heart responds not to pressure, but to patience. It does not open through force, but through softness, so we must learn to wait without rushing, to stay present without demanding progress. Healing will come, not when we chase it, but when we become still enough to receive it. When we create the conditions for truth to rise, healing follows naturally. It is easy to get discouraged when the pain feels persistent, when old wounds resurface, when the process feels endless, but these are not signs of failure. They are signs of depth. Layers of healing often unfold like peeling an onion. Each layer reveals another, and each time we meet what is revealed with love, we become more whole, we become more real, we become more ourselves. One of the most powerful things we can do is to hold ourselves through the process without needing to fix everything right away, to say, I see you, to our own suffering, to say, you are allowed to be here. This kind of self-acceptance is what transforms inner chaos into calm. It builds a relationship with ourselves that is rooted in trust, and from that trust everything begins to shift. The dragon only stops growing when it is seen. In the same way, our wounds begin to soften when we stop pretending they're not there. We don't need to be perfect to heal, we only need to be honest, and honesty is always available, right here, right now. It doesn't require a therapist or a guru or a retreat in the mountains. It only requires us to pause, take a breath, and say, this is what I'm feeling. That is enough to begin. That is enough to open the door, and once the door is open, healing walks in. We don't have to do it all today, we don't have to solve everything at once, but if we can be with what is, just for this moment, we are already on the path. We are already healing, and in that simple, grounded awareness, we are already free.